If you were well-to-do in the late 60s and looking for a grand touring car, the options couldn't have been better. There was the front-engine Ferrari 365 GTB4. The Daytona, as it grew to be called, to this day remains an icon for the company. There was the mid-engine Lamborghini Miura, arguably the most beautiful Lamborghini, if not car, of all time. And then there was the car that outsold them both, the Maserati Ghibli. It takes just one look to understand why.
Hopping into the Ghibli is very much a time capsule back to the driving culture of the late 60s. As far as its powertrain was concerned, as far as its suspension was concerned, it was behind the times, especially when compared to the Lamborghini Miura and the Ferrari Daytona. But it didn't matter, because all you had to do was simply look at this car. The design of this set the pace for the rest of the market afterwards. Driving it now is a real treat. The steering is of course manually operated, but I'm loving the sensation of cornering in this, figuring out how much weight you need to dial into the wheel, how many turns it takes. The steering has a lot of play and a rather big turning radius, something above 40 feet. It's quite boat-like in that regard. And the car gives the illusion of being bigger than it is. It's because you have such a wide windshield, but it's actually pretty narrow, especially versus some of the comparable cars today. And yes, it's not going to dance very nicely along the twisty mountain roads, but it's going to take you there in a really nice way. The Gran Turismo was a very interesting car. It wasn't about getting there as fast as possible. It was about enjoying the trip and arriving with a lot of style. And that's what this car did exceptionally well.
This particular example is owned by Motor Trend technical director Frank Marcus. It's a 1967 model, powered by a 4.7-liter V8 with around 310 horsepower.
I bought the Maserati Ghibli because I was absolutely knocked out by the styling of it. That's number one. And number two, back when I bought it in 2000, they were ridiculously affordable. They were like Camry money back in those days for a car that cost more than a Ferrari Daytona when it was new, and outsold the Daytona as well. My Maserati is the first year, 1967, the first year of the Ghibli. So it's kind of the most pure of the design. You know, Giugiaro designed it, and it came out in 67, and then they started having to put marker lights and bumper overriders and pedestrian protection and little stuff that chipped away at the looks of the car. So I think this one is the purest of the design. So the Ghibli was the last vehicle that the Orsi family signed off on. The Orsi family had run Maserati for a long time, pretty much since the Maserati brothers got out of it. And this was the last car that they signed off on. They were getting into some financial trouble, and Citroën ended up buying the company shortly thereafter. So it's a significant point in Maserati's own history. It's also an important point in Giorgetto Giugiaro's life. He was in his 20s. He was working at Ghia, and he was really hitting his stride. He was penning this car at the same time he was penning the Di Tommaso Mangusta, also another gorgeous car with a lot of similar techniques, although on a different proportion for a mid-engine car. Later in life, Giugiaro would be voted the designer of the 20th century, and he personally regarded this car as his favorite from that period. Well, it's interesting. The Maserati Ghibli was most directly compared with the Lamborghini Miura and the Ferrari Daytona. Both of those cars have 12-cylinder engines. They both handle better, but you could make the argument that this is the Grand Touring class. And as far as Grand Touring goes, this is kind of the best one for that. It's far and away the most comfortable, the quietest, you know, the best one to take on a super long trip. And I think it's also one of the most reliable because the V8 in this car was a detuned race engine for the 50s. They had a lot of, you know, experience with it. It was a very solid car.
That's a good feeling. That's a good feeling. This V8 almost feels lazy in comparison to the other Italian V12s, but it's such a cool powertrain considering what kind of car it's in. You have a broad torque range. You have over 300 horsepower or so, and when you rev it out to 5,500, which is the indicated red line, sounds really good. It gets some energy in the car. I really like the shifter too. It has a very good feel once you're about to get into gear. It looks kind of dopey, but the act of moving it from gear to gear feels really nice. I really like the ergonomics of this car too, because you sort of lean back in the chair. It's a very living room sofa kind of feeling. The steering wheel is really large and thin. And I love the design on it, this wood trim with the grooves cut in for your fingertips. It feels really nice. This 4.7-liter V8 was very different in concept than the V12s the other Italians were putting in their GTs. But it had torque, and that's really nice because you could just lug along in a higher gear. Also, you don't need as many revs to get the thing moving like some of those V12s do. Also, by putting the engine up front, unlike Lamborghini, you have a ton of cargo space over your shoulder. It's pretty amazing how much room is back there. You could legitimately travel in this thing, road trip in this thing, so long as, you know, your credit card's okay with the gas prices. The driving experience, though, is really nice. This isn't about limit performance. It's about not rushing to the destination, but enjoying the time it takes you to get there. These cars were around when it was a luxury to travel long distances, and that's why this car cost so much back in the day.
The Ghibli isn't about outright speed or limit performance, but the enjoyment of the overall experience. The big steering wheel and long throw shifter like a relaxed pace. Get used to them, listen to that deep burbling exhaust, and you can fall into this wonderful trance-like state. That feeling makes you think of what it must have been like to drive from one villa to the other, taking all day to get there. And it reminds you that the personality of a car is more important than the specs.
The Q50 is helping us out because this road is actually pretty terrible in terms of just surface conditions. So typically when we're doing like a POV shot, it'll be a car-to-car type of shot that we're looking to get. So we'll shoot a couple corners, run around, you know, with all this gear, and then hop back into the Q50. And you know, luckily it's a decent amount less humid inside than it is out here. So yeah, it's good. It's nice to know that we'll have a car like that to run around in. So right now we have a storm coming in. We're going to mount this DSLR setup on the front of the Q50 and then chase down the Maserati, see what kind of shots we can get. That's a 2.8. Frank is up ahead trying to make his way through this. The sky's just opened up on us. I mean, it's hard to see anything. There's standing water everywhere, and
That sucks.
Why haven't they approached you earlier, Carlos?
Isn't it an active hood?
You're perfect.
An active hood.